and welcome to The Same Drugs. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
There's a lot that I'd like to talk to you about, but I'm gonna ask you some very big questions. I'm sure you're used to that. You've to date led a very interesting and respectable life from my perspective. And of course, you're most well known for converting something like 200 members of the KKK. And is that accurate?
Well, how I phrased it is, yes, 200 white supremacists, some KKK members, others neo-Nazis, others different organizations, some just individual racists, have converted themselves. I have been the impetus for it. I never, sought to convert them. I sought to give them examples of better ways that they should think about. And in doing so, they ended up converting themselves.
Right. So tell me a little bit about that process. I mean, how does one change the mind of somebody who is so attached to, let's say, like a bigoted ideology? Somebody who believes that Black people are lesser than, essentially. What would you say to a person like that?
Well, absolutely. Okay. Well, first of all, one's perception is one's reality. Whatever somebody perceives, that becomes their perception, that becomes their reality. Even if it's not real, it's still their reality because it's all they know. So you don't want to attack somebody else's reality, because if you do, they're going to push back. They're going to resist. They're going to put up a defense and fight back, because they only know what they know. So what you want to do is you want to offer them a better perception or better perceptions. And if they resonate with one of the perceptions that you have offered, then they will change their own reality, because one's perception is one's reality. So let me give you an example, Megan. Let's just say, for example, you have a 7 or 8-year-old brother, and he goes to a magic show with his buddy somewhere. And he comes home and tells you that the magician on stage asked for a female volunteer, and 50 women raised their hand. And he selected one of those women out there. And so he invites her to come up on stage, and he has this big long box, and he opens the lid and tells the woman to climb in the box and stick her feet out the hole at this end and stick her head out the hole at that end. And then he closes the lid, and then he asks her to wiggle her feet, and she shakes her feet out that hole. And then he takes a chainsaw and goes, and he cuts that box in half. And then your brother tells you, he cut this woman in half. And you try to say, oh, well, it didn't really happen like that. He's going to be like, no, it did happen. I saw it with my own eyes. I was there. You weren't even there. I saw it. The saw went through the box and she was stretched out in the box. He knows what he saw. That is his perception, that this man cut this woman in half with a saw. He knows what he saw. It was real to him. And you are attacking his reality. Essentially, you're telling him that what he saw wasn't real. He knows what he saw. And then to make it even more evident to you, he tells you that after the man cut the box in half, he told the woman to wiggle her feet. And she wiggled her feet out that hole. And then he took the half with the feet and moved it over to that side of the stage, and took the half with the head and moved it over to this side of the stage. And then he walked over there and he spoke to the woman's head, and the woman's head talked back to him. And then he brought the two halves of the box back together, and he did some incantation, and then he opened the lid, and the woman climbed out, full form, no blood, all back together. He says he cut her in half and he put her back together. And you're like, well, it was an illusion. No, it wasn't. I'm telling you, I saw it. He separated her. Her feet were there. Her head was there, on and on and on, right? And so you are attacking his reality, and he's getting upset, and he's resisting. He's fighting back. So instead of attacking someone's reality, you offer them a better perception. You say to your brother, hey, listen, I hear what you're saying. Do you think maybe it's possible that just perhaps, when he asked for a female volunteer and you say 50 women raised their hand, is it possible that maybe the one he chose to come up on stage. Maybe she knows the trick. Maybe he planted her in the audience. She works for him, and she travels to all the shows all over the country where he goes. And when she climbs into that box, there is already a pair of mannequin dummy legs laying in on the floor of the box that are wearing the same stockings and same shoes that she has on. She just picks up those dummy legs and shoves them out the hole. And she brings her own knees up under her chest. So essentially, her whole body is on that half of the box. And then when he cuts the box in half, the saw doesn't even touch her. And when he asks her to wiggle her feet, she just shakes those legs, those mannequin legs. And then he separates the two halves of the box. Now, obviously, when the legs are on that side of the stage, she can no longer move them because they're mannequin legs. So he has to direct your attention away from those legs. He walks to this side of the stage and talks to the head. Now, her whole body is already over there. And so the head talks back. So your attention is over there where she's live. And then when he brings the box back together, he simply withdraws those legs out of the hole, leaves them, she draws them out of the hole, leaves them laying on the floor of the box, and she climbs out. And so then your brother says, you know, that might be the only way that could work. So you've given him a better perception, and his perception becomes his reality rather than you attack his reality. That's why I say I don't convert them. I give them the impetus to convert themselves. I give them better perceptions.
Mm-hmm. That's a good analogy. And it certainly rings true. We see this a lot nowadays on social media where people are constantly at each other's throats, and it accomplishes, I would say mostly nothing. Usually when people get involved in heated or toxic arguments and debates online, I mean, let's assume they're not just doing this for fun. Let's assume that they genuinely believe that they're, trying to change people's minds, that, they're dealing with somebody who holds bad, wrong, or dangerous ideas, and they want to convince them to think in better, more ethical ways.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess, do you think that it's that people are going about this in the wrong way, or do you think this is sort of something built into social media platforms or human nature or something?
Well, all of the above. I mean, of course, there are people out there who just simply want to troll and start arguments and then sit back and watch people fight. They get off on that for whatever reason. There are those people, but as you pointed out, a lot of people genuinely believe, the opinion that they post on social media. And then, of course, somebody has a different opinion, and then they start the finger pointing. Oh, no, you're wrong. You're an idiot for thinking like that. That accomplishes nothing. How are you going to listen to somebody, when they're calling you an idiot and telling you that you're wrong? You're better off saying, hey, tell me more about why you think that way. Let them get out all the facts. Listen to them, because if you truly believe that you're right, then you have nothing to fear by them letting them talk and give you all their perceived facts. Because if you are right, eventually they're going to reveal enough information that's going to hang them. And you can take what they said and say, hey, you said da 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 da. Well, here's why it doesn't work, or here's why it works a different way. So you can use the information that they have provided against them. But that's number one. Number two, in order for you to be heard, you also have to listen to them. It has to be a two-way street. Why should they listen to you if you're not willing to listen to them? And so, it can get emotional, sure, because somebody is attacking your credibility. And that's why I say don't attack their reality, because they only know what they know. You only know what you know. And so be open-minded and be willing to hear people. I have been, fortunately, not as fortunate as some people, but I have been to 61 countries on 6 continents, and I have performed in all 50 states. Now, ironically, last summer, I met 2 people a week apart who don't even know each other. One guy from Estonia and one guy from California. And the guy from Estonia had been to 165 countries. The guy from California had been to 125 countries. So I'm way behind at 61. But
Clearly.
but all that is to say that, you know, in all this travel, I've been exposed to a multitude of skin colors, ethnicities, cultures, ideologies, religions, etc. And all of that has helped shape who I am. Um, all this travel does not make me a better human being than somebody who has less travel experience, but it does give me a better uh, perspective on humanity because I've been exposed to so many different types of human beings. And I have gleaned information from all of those people. And what I have consistently found, I've added up and boiled it down to 5 core values. Everybody in the world wants these 5 core values in their lives, no matter who they are. And I found this out that no matter how far I go from the United States, my own country, whether it's right next door to Canada or right next door to Mexico, or halfway around the globe. No matter how different the people I encounter may be, perhaps they don't look like me, they don't speak my language, they don't worship as I do, but I've concluded that they all want these 5 values. Everyone wants to be loved, everyone wants to be respected, everyone wants to be heard. We all want to be treated fairly. And we all basically want the same things for our family as anybody else wants for their family. And if we can learn to apply those 5 core values or any of those values when we find ourselves in an adversarial situation, like in social media or whatever, or we find ourselves in a culture or society in which we are unfamiliar, I can guarantee you that the navigation will be much more smooth and much more positive. Even if you don't agree, at least you can have a civil conversation and you can learn something from somebody else that you may not have known, and you can share something with them that they may not have known. And that's how we learn. You might find something, you might find yourself agreeing with them. They might find themselves agreeing with you. But that does not come when you are antagonistic like that. All right, so we apply those values, and being heard is key. There's no reason for anybody to listen to you if you're not willing to listen to them. And so that's why I say let them get it all out. Allow them to be listened to, and in doing so, you are respecting them. You may not be respecting what they're saying, but you are respecting their right to say it. And that's very important because people want to be heard, they want to be respected.
You grew up in America and you've since traveled the world. And sorry.
Well, I grew up around the world. I'm,
Okay.
I'm from America, but I started traveling at a young age, at the age of 3, with my parents. My parents were at U.S. Embassy, so we lived in different countries every 2 years, coming back home in between. And then, of course, in my adulthood, after I graduated college with a degree in music, I became a professional performer, and so I've played around the country and played around the world.
But you were a Black child in America. You experienced that.
I still am.
Okay, fair enough. When do we ever really grow up? I wonder, what was that experience like of growing up in America? Did that give you, and of traveling the world, having been able to experience being Black in different countries, having,
I found out that people considered me different. I never knew that. I never knew that I was a Black child. I was just a child. Okay, because my first exposure, now you got to picture this. My first exposure to school was overseas. I first left this country in 1961. I was born in 1958. So at the age of 3, I first went overseas. As I said, you live in a country for 2 years. That's your assignment, and then you come back home here to the States. You may be here for a few months, or if you request it, you could be here for a year, and then you get reassigned to another country abroad. So my first experience with school, I did kindergarten, first grade, third grade, fifth grade, seventh grade overseas. And so my first exposure to school was overseas. My classroom in kindergarten, first grade, my classmates were from all over the world. Any country that had an embassy in the same country to which we were assigned, all of their kids went to the same school. So my classmates were from Japan, Russia, China, France, Germany, Italy, Czechoslovakia, Australia, you name it. If they had embassies there, their kids were there. So because that was my first experience with school, that was my baseline. That was my norm. To me, that was normal. Here in this country in the 1960s, that multicultural scenario did not exist. We did not have that kind of diversity in this country in the classroom. So every time I would come home here to my own country, I would either be in all black schools or black and white schools, meaning the still segregated or the newly integrated, because desegregation was passed by our US Supreme Court in 1954, 4 years before I was born. But that does not mean that integration took place the next day after the decision was made. It took years and years and years for schools to integrate. It's a very slow process. So even in the 1960s, even into the 1970s, a lot of schools remained still segregated as they tried to work towards integration. Some didn't want to work towards integration. And so when I would come home, I didn't understand that separation. You're a lot younger than I am, so you don't remember growing up with black and white TV, but you've always had color TV. When I was a kid, the first TVs we had were black and white, and everything was in black and white. And then we got color. It was like, whoa, wow, a whole new dimension opened up. It's like black and white photography as opposed to a color camera, or a black and white printer to a color printer, right? So when I was overseas, I was living in living color. And so, usually people go from black and white to color. When I was coming home from overseas to here, I was going from color to black and white. It was kind of like a reverse thing. So literally, I was living, when I was overseas, I was living about 10 years ahead of my time, because that multicultural color society had yet to come to this country. It came like 10 years later. I was already prepared for it, but my classmates and my peers, were not. So I did not grow up with a lot of racism, except when I would be home here in my own country, and I didn't understand it. My first instance with it was 1968. I was age 10, and we had just come home from an assignment overseas, and I was one of two black kids in the entire school. I was in fourth grade, and there was a little black girl in second grade. That was it, just the two of us. Everybody else was white. And so all of my friends were fourth and fifth graders. And so they all were white. And several of my male friends were members of the Cub Scouts, and they invited me to join. So I joined. Now, this is at the height of the Civil Rights Movement, 1968. And I joined the Cub Scouts. We had a parade. I was the only black scout in this parade. Everything was fine. People were cheering and waving, all white people up and down the sidewalks. And we got to a certain point in this parade route when I was suddenly hit with bottles and soda pop cans and small rocks and debris from the street by just a few spectators, not everybody, just a few, maybe 4 or 5 people. I remember there being some kids and a couple of adults who were throwing things. Because I never had that experience before, I thought the people over here on the sidewalk did not like the scouts. That's how naive I was. I didn't realize I was the only scout getting hit until my scout leaders all came running, and they covered me with their bodies and escorted me out of the danger. And I realized that none of my other scouts were getting this special protection. So now I'm wondering, what did I do? What did I do to upset these people? I thought I'd done something. And I kept saying, why are they doing this? Why are they doing this? I didn't do anything. And all they would do is kind of shush me, and rush me along and tell me, keep moving, everything will be okay, just keep moving. And so they never answered my question as to why this was happening to me. So at the end of the parade, I went home, and my mother and father were not at the parade, but they were at home. And when I came in, they were asking me, "How did you fall down and get all cut up and all scraped up?" And they're cleaning me up and putting band-aids on me and trying to find out how I tripped and fell down. And I told them, I didn't fall down. People threw things at me, and I don't know why. Well, for the first time in my life, my mother and father sat me down and explained to me what racism was. Now, understand, I gave you the scenario in which I grew up around everybody from all over the world. At the age of 10, I had never even heard the word racism. I had no clue what they were talking about because that word, that behavior was not in my circle, in my sphere. It didn't exist. I got along with people from all over the world. Maybe we didn't look alike, we didn't speak alike, but we worked together, we played together, went to school together, we had slumber parties together. Racism did not exist in my world. So when my parents were telling me this, it was hard for my 10-year-old brain to process the idea that somebody who had never seen me before, someone who had never spoken with me, someone who knew nothing about me would want to hurt me for no other reason than this, the color of my skin. It made no sense to me. And the people who were doing this to me did not look, the people on the sidewalk, they did not look any different to me than my friends, whether they were my friends right here in the States at my fourth grade class, or whether they were my friends overseas, my little French friends, my little friends from Switzerland or Sweden or Denmark or Australia. They all looked alike, and they didn't behave that way. So my parents were wrong. It had nothing to do with the color of my skin, because people who look like the people who were doing this, they don't treat me like that. So my parents were wrong. I did not believe my parents because I could not justify any logical reason. Well, about a month and a half to almost 2 months later, that same year, 1968, on April the 4th, which is just a couple days ago, right? Martin Luther King was assassinated. And I remember it very clearly. Every major city in this country, my hometown, Chicago, where I am right now, Washington, D.C., New York, Philadelphia, Detroit, Boston, Baltimore, they all burned to the ground with violence, destruction. Like, you don't remember that because you weren't born, but you remember 2 years ago, the rioting and the destruction with George Floyd, right? Multiply that by about 100 times. That's what it was in 1968. And so then and all of this destruction and burning was done in the name of this new word that I had learned 2 months ago called racism. So now I understood that my mother and father had not lied to me. This phenomenon, racism, whatever it is, it's real. It exists. But I accepted it. I accepted that it existed. But what I did not understand was why. And at the age of 10, I formed a question in my mind, which was, how can you hate me when you don't even know me? And I have been looking for the answer to that question for 54 years. So, because nobody could answer it, people say, oh, well, Daryl, some people are just like that. That's just the way it is. Well, no, that's not good enough. I want to know why. So, who better to ask that question of than somebody who would go so far as to join an organization that has over 100-year history of practicing hating people who don't look like them, who do not believe as they believe. So I began seeking out people who would join the KKK, the American Nazi Party, and different organizations like that to say, hey, tell me why. How can you hate me? You don't even know me. You see me, all you see is this, and you make all these assertions about me. So that's how that started.
And what did you learn? I mean, are these people fundamentally bad people? Are they fundamentally hateful people? What is it that underlies this
Okay.
bigotry?
Well, a racist, a white supremacist, a KKK member, a neo-Nazi, they're not stamped out of a standard cookie cutter. They come from all different walks of life, all different educational backgrounds, socioeconomic statuses, Some come from very dysfunctional families. Some come from normal families. So we can't just lump them all into a category. Are they all basically bad people or whatever? Yeah, there are a lot who are bad people, no question about it. But there are others who are fundamentally good people but have bad ideas because they have not been exposed to things that that would otherwise show them different. Let me give you my favorite quote of all time, and maybe that will help explain a little bit of it. It's called The Travel Quote by the author Mark Twain. And Mark Twain said, "Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow mindedness, and many of our people need it sorely on these accounts. Broad, wholesome, charitable views of men and things cannot be acquired by vegetating in one little corner of the earth all one's lifetime." And that is so true. Unfortunately, most Americans do not travel. In fact, most Americans don't even have passports. We don't even travel within our own country. So our exposure to other people, other cultures is very narrow compared to people, say European people. European people travel all the time. They're always going somewhere and seeing different things. It doesn't make them better people. It gives them a better perspective on humanity because they've seen different cultures. And so, you know, I say that a lot of people are not fundamentally bad people. They're good people. They think they're doing the right thing, but they don't know because they lack the exposure. It's called ignorance. Ignorance. And the way you cure ignorance is through exposure and education. And that's where we need to invest our time, our energy, our resources, our finances, etc., to providing more education and more exposure to our own people to cure that ignorance.
Mm-hmm. And it seems like one of the biggest problems today in terms of division and people hating one another is that people do get stuck in a bubble of other people just like them, other
Mhm.
people who believe the same things as them, other people that have the exact same experience as them, other people
Mhm.
who live like them.
Echo
And
chambers.
exactly. And we talk about that a lot in the context of social media, but it happens in real life too, of course. I wonder, you know, why why are people inclined, because people are choosing this. Like part of it is that, you grew up in this area, you stay in this area, you don't leave the area, and you tend to be, like I grew up in a city in Canada.
Uh-huh.
It's an urban center. Most of the people that were around were middle or upper class. Most people that I was around were white people. Canada is a relatively privileged country, and I didn't really start traveling much. And I wasn't really exposed to people who weren't like me, who were primarily, progressive leftist people, until I was older and either I started traveling or, like I was doing interviews, and the work that I was doing was exposing me to a lot of different kinds of people who believed a lot of different kinds of things. But, most people maybe don't have that experience. Certainly most people don't have the experience that you had. Um, but yeah, people do choose this. People seem disinclined to want to even be around people who aren't like them, despite the fact that it would help them a lot. It would help the world a lot. They would learn something. It would be interesting. But people seem to want to only be around people like them and people who agree with them and have the same politics as them and have the same religion or atheism or whatever as they do. Why do you think that is?
Because people, human beings, are creatures of habit, not creatures of change. Have you ever owned cats or dogs?
Yeah, dogs, always, my whole life, dogs.
Okay, well, dogs are creatures of change. They're, if you were to move to a different residence every week, you take your dog with you, it'd be happy wherever you are. It'd be its home. But if you had cats, cats do not like change. As soon as you go somewhere different, they're going to be trying to get out the door and go back to where they came from.
Hmm.
Okay, that's people. They say, dog is a man's best friend. Well, that may be, but man is closer to a cat than a dog because we don't like change. We tend to self-segregate. Like, for example, let's say you work in a company, or you're in college or whatever, and there's diversity there. You might even be working on a project with people who don't look like you, or they don't worship as you do, or whatever. You might even share the same cubicle with these people. But what happens at 12 noon? You go downstairs to the cafeteria for your lunch. And what happens? Black people sit with Black people. Hispanic people sit with Hispanic people. Asians sit with Asians. People tend to self-segregate. Does that mean that they're racist? No, not at all. People just tend to feel more comfortable around familiarity. And so people who share the same language, they might share the same religion, the same manner of dress, or the same whatever culture. That does not mean they're racist. Now, if you go and try to sit at their table, they say, no, get out of here. Go back to your table. Then you got a problem. And that's a problem that needs to be addressed. So people, they want to be around familiarity. It doesn't mean that they're racist, but we need to take the time to walk across the cafeteria. Don't be afraid to leave your comfort group, maybe once or twice a week. Get up from your table and walk over to somebody else's table and have a seat and get to know those people over lunch, because you have a lot to teach them and you have a lot to learn from them. And in the process, there's an excellent chance you will make a new friend and you will broaden your horizons and broaden their horizons. Just do it twice a week. It would go so far to do that. Because let me tell you something, you brought up a good point. You came from a community in Canada where you were surrounded by nothing but the white people, et cetera, et cetera. I give anywhere between 60 and 80 lectures a year. Not so much during pandemic years, but, in regular time. A lot of them at corporations or colleges, universities, whatever. With the colleges and universities, I would say 2 or 3 out of every 10 lectures I give, this will happen. I'll do the lecture, I'll do a Q&A, and then I'm done. But, some of the students still want to ask some questions. So they'll come to the podium and we'll talk and they'll ask more questions. Or I might bring some Klan robes with me to show what people have given to me after they've left that ideology. Somebody might want to touch the Klan robes or whatever. Well, 2 or 3 times out of 10, when this happens, there will be some students standing in the back of the auditorium. They're not doing anything. They're just standing there, milling around, doing nothing. I've come to learn what's up. That person, he or she, is waiting for the crowd to leave me alone, go away. And when the crowd goes about their business and I'm by myself packing stuff up, he or she will come down and they'll look around, make sure nobody's still around. They say, hi, Mr. Davis, I enjoyed your lecture. I shake their hand, thank them. And then they look around and they whisper to me. They say, my mother is in the Klan, or my father's a neo-Nazi. My father's a white power skinhead, or whatever. And that's how I was raised. I came from wherever, and that's how we were raised. And now I'm here at University of whatever, fill in the blank. And my girlfriend is Jewish, or my boyfriend is Black, or my best friend is gay. And I can't take that person home. My parents will kill me. My parents will disown me. And I don't want to tell my friend because they'll drop me. So they've got this secret that's burning on their chest, causing an ulcer. They don't know what to do. It has to come out. So they take it out with me because they figure I can understand this and I'm a good person to talk to. So that's why they approach me. And it's exactly what you pointed out, Megan. They come from some neighborhood where everybody is homogenous. They all go to the same high school. They vote for the same political candidate. They cheer the same sports team. They swim at the same community swimming pool, shop at the same grocery store. So everything is homogenous. They all believe the same way. But then this person, he or she, goes away to college. And guess what happens? That neighborhood, that high school, does not come there. On that college campus, there are neighborhoods and high schools from all over the country and all over the world on that campus. And now they're being exposed to things they never saw in their neighborhood. They're learning that Jewish people don't have horns. Black people don't have tails. Gay people are okay, and whatever else. And so how do they go back home and tell their parents, you were wrong? Tell their high school best friends, hey, it's not like that at all. You know, they're at a loss because their parents wanted them to go get an education, but not that education, you know? So how do you tell your parents who you've grown up with your whole life and you used to be just like that they're wrong? So that's what they do. You said, when you started traveling, you began seeing different things. Sure, it's that exposure, that education that cures that ignorance. I'm not saying ignorance in a derogatory sense. We all are ignorant to different things. It means unaware. Now there is some people want to define ignorance and stupidity as being synonymous. I don't do that. To me, an ignorant person is someone who makes a bad decision or makes the wrong choice because he or she does not have the proper facts or the proper information to make the right decision or a correct or a good choice. A stupid person is someone who has the facts, who has the right information, and they still make the wrong decision or a bad choice. Like, for example, let's say I have a room and I paint all the walls in the room so they're wet, but I don't put up any signs that say wet paint, stay off the wall. Anybody walking into that room is ignorant to the fact that these walls are wet, and they might go and lean on the wall, and now they got paint on their clothing. So I can cure that ignorance by providing the education. I can paint the walls and I can put up little signs that say wet paint, stay clear of the walls. I can stand in the doorway and tell each person coming in that room, hey, gather around the center. The walls are wet. I just painted them 10 minutes ago. So gather in the center. Don't go near the walls. Now everybody has the proper information. Everybody has the facts to make the right decision, the correct choice. But yet, even after I provide all that, somebody still comes in and goes and leans on the wall, and now he wants to know, why is there paint on his clothes? It's because he's stupid. All right. He had the information, he didn't use it. So fortunately, there is a cure for ignorance. The cure is education, exposure. Unfortunately, there is no cure for stupidity. You know, so if you give somebody the education and they don't use it, there's nothing you can do until they decide that, they want to use it. So this is where, this platform that I'm working with now, Minds, it's where it comes in. Instead of discussing things, people want to cancel people out. Cancel culture. You'll shut them down. No, you're wrong. I'm not talking to you. You don't understand anything. You're wrong, and that's the end of it. That's the end of our relationship. Even families have been torn apart because my brother voted for that candidate and I voted for this one, so I'm not talking to him. I can't go to my parents' house for Thanksgiving because my mother voted for so and so and I didn't vote for him. This is crazy. This is cancel culture. You got to realize, at least in our country, the U.S., no matter who you voted for president, doesn't matter. That person is only going to be in office for a minimum of 4 years, a maximum of 8 years. How long have you been with your family? You've been with your family for decades. Are you going to throw away decades of a relationship over somebody you're upset with for 4 years or 8 years? That's crazy. We have to learn how to talk civilly. Not let our emotions get in front of us. Keep our emotions behind us. Listen to why your brother or your sister or your coworker or your classmate or whoever, your best friend, that you thought you knew so well, listen to them tell you why they voted for this person. Not everybody one size fits all. That person that they voted for, you may not find any redeeming qualities in him or her, but they have seen something that they like, and that's why they voted for him. Your candidate does not fit all. You've seen something that you like, but they see something totally different. It's important to be able to express those things without canceling somebody else out. And this is what Minds has provided. We believe in the First Amendment of this country, freedom of speech, but we have civil dialogue, where we can come together. We don't have to agree, but everybody is able to express their opinion. And we can learn from one another, because the best cure for something that we find abhorrent or whatever, information that we find to be false and fake and hateful and so forth and so on, is to provide better, more positive information. Because in the long run, the truth will always come out. The truth will always come out eventually. So you provide those platforms where we can listen to somebody who we think, is wrong. And we don't tell them, hey, you're wrong, get off the platform, you're out of here because you said something that does not align with our belief. Sort of like, you go into the platform jail. There are plenty of social media platforms, where you can get kicked off, Twitter, Facebook, etc. We believe in providing a platform for everybody. What happens when you kick somebody off, where you don't allow them, you cancel them, don't allow them to express their views? You think you're getting rid of them? No. Very few people just go away and that's the end of it. They end up going somewhere where they are welcome, and there's a platform for them to express those views, whether they're hateful, whether they're whatever they are. And that becomes their echo chamber, and it builds and builds and festers, and then one day it explodes, sort of like Charlottesville here in the U.S. that we had back in 2017. That had been brewing for a long time because people are not allowed to express those views. So Minds, we welcome people onto the platform. We want to have civil discussion. We want to hear new ideas, even if it's ideas that people don't agree with. Let's find out why we don't agree, and let's discuss. If I don't agree with you, let me provide you with more information that might help you see my way, or you provide me with more information that helps me see your way. That's how we do this.
Right. And because of your involvement in Minds, you were recently involved with the Censorship Effect, which is a report that Bill Ottman, the founder of Minds, was involved with, and you, of course, and some others. And, this report, as I understand it, was looking into the impact of censoring extremist or radical or dangerous ideas. I wonder what you found.
What we found was this: by deplatforming people, by censoring them, taking away their platform, they seek another platform. And there are other platforms out there that welcome them. And then they surround them with echo chambers of people who believe in that. And then you start getting these conspiracy theories, concocted in these platforms that you've driven them to. And the more they are around those echo chambers, the more you're lighting the fuse to a time bomb. Okay, because everybody conspires, and that's what happens. They all believe the same thing, and now they're going to act upon it, rather than have a civil dialogue with people who may not share your opinion. If you think you're that right, then talk to those people. Allow them to share their ideas. Provide better information than you think you're receiving. Keep the conversation going. Listen, when two enemies or two adversaries are talking, they're not fighting. They're talking. When two enemies are talking, they're not fighting. It's when the conversation ceases that the ground becomes fertile for violence. So you want to keep the conversation going. When you start off as adversaries, you're like this far apart from each other at opposite ends of the spectrum. If you talk for 5 minutes with your worst enemy, you will find something in common. And that gap begins to narrow. You talk for another 5 minutes, you'll find even more in common, and the gap narrows some more. When you get at this point, you're in a relationship with your adversary. It's a cordial relationship. You may not be best friends, but you are relating to one another. You're respecting one another to sit there and listen to one another, even though you have opposite views. And you keep on talking, it gets even more narrow because now you found even more in common. So here, you're starting a friendship. You may not agree on everything, but you're friendly with one another. When you get to this point, you have found so much in common that the trivial things that you have in contrast, such as skin color, or whether you go to a church, a synagogue, a mosque, or a temple, they matter less and less. and you begin to realize, hey, you know what? We found so much we can agree on. It doesn't matter that I go to a church and he goes to a synagogue or a mosque. We found so much more that we can agree upon. And that's the power of dialogue. Nothing gets solved without conversation. I've always said that a missed opportunity for dialogue is a missed opportunity for conflict resolution, and that is the basis of the Minds platform. Let's come together. Let's talk about of why you believe this, why I believe that. Let's discuss it. We have an open forum. You're free to talk about whatever you want to talk about. Now, you can't, be threatening somebody's life or anything like that. Anything stupid, where you're condoning, violent behavior and things like that. But you can have the most abhorrent views you want to have, but let's talk about them.
Right. I mean, and what you learn from those kinds of conversations, for example, is that, somebody who voted for Trump, say you voted for Biden and you're dealing with somebody who voted for Trump, and a lot of people have decided that anybody who would vote for Trump is a bad, hateful person, a racist person, a sexist person, so on and so forth. But when you actually talk to people who voted differently than you, whether that's for Trump or for Biden or whomever, is that they're not bad people, they're not hateful people, that generally well-intentioned people, and that they have, valid reasons for voting as they did.
Right. They see something that appeals to them. Okay. For example, I'll be straight up here. I'm not a fan of Donald Trump. Okay. I did not vote for Donald Trump. Years ago, I'm a musician, as you know. I played for Donald Trump. My band was part of the entertainment package that he had at one of his events. So, he was not involved in politics back then. So I performed for him. Politically, I did not support him, but I would say probably 45% of my friends are Trump supporters. Now, are those people racist, my friends? No, they're not racist at all. They see something in Donald Trump that I don't see. They see him as a businessman. They're tired of all these politicians promising this and promising that and not delivering, and our economy is terrible. And here's a businessman, a multi-billionaire. He knows money. He's going to fix the economy. That's what they see in Donald Trump. And that appeals to them. And you say to them, well, what about, when he talks about, grabbing women by the crotch and telling off that, those people and these people. Well, they don't like that, but they're willing to put up with that because he's going to fix what they need fixed, the economy. Now, I don't see him as a smart businessman. I see him as a failed businessman because he's had a bunch of bankruptcies. I have not seen him carry out and do what he says he's going to do, but that's my opinion. And I am willing to sit there and listen to you convince me otherwise. And, I don't want to be wrong. And if you can give me a better perception that I will resonate with, then fine. I might change my mind. But in return, I would like you to sit down and listen to why I did not vote for Trump. I'm not going to attack you for voting for him. I see, there's something there that that appeals to you. But I want to offer you a better perception, the lesser of two evils or whatever, things like that. I'm not saying that, Joe Biden or Obama or Clinton or Carter or, Bush or whoever is a better person. There's no one size fits all, but we choose the person that we think will do the best for us and the best for our country. So I understand that. And that's why here at Minds, we're willing to have these conversations and we welcome them. There are people, I have plenty of friends on Minds who I may not agree with, but we can talk and have these civil conversations. And that is what is so important that is lacking in social media today. So we are offering that alternative.
Mm-hmm. And, arguably, and big tech platforms like Twitter would argue that what they're trying to do in banning people, in censoring people, is prevent hate because, these hateful ideas are dangerous and cause harm. In reality, from my perspective, most people who are banned from these platforms aren't actually, they aren't advocating violence or genocide or anything like that. They're posting ideas or information that these companies, or perhaps the people who work for these companies, or perhaps people who use these platforms, think are bad ideas and have therefore defined as dangerous. I'm curious to know, do you think that there are certain ideas or certain information that should be banned or censored in social media, but perhaps in other contexts as well, publications, etc.?
Sure, of course there are. Say child pornography, for example. I don't see any use for anything like that. Why should that be on social media? Why should it be on any media? Abuse of children, advocating murder of certain people. No, genocide, things like that. And there are people who are into that kind of stuff. We hear about people being busted for child pornography or proliferation of drugs or genocide. All the time.
Mhm.
Those people. I would like to know why they feel that way. Sure, but I think when you're advocating for ending somebody's life or traumatizing a child's life, no, that has no room. Things like that should be banned and should be reported so people can monitor those people and keep track of those people, because you don't want your children exposed to that any more so than I would want mine or anybody else's exposed to that kind of thing. Like for example, the news today, we're seeing um, people of Ukraine having their hands tied behind their backs, and they're executed, and their bodies are lying in the streets and in mass graves. We need to know about that. We need to know, why are these people doing this? Do they have no humanity? What kind of families do they come from that allows them to do this with no conscience? Things like this can be discussed. There'll be people who are pro-Russia. There'll be people who are pro-Ukraine. These are conversations that we need to have, but we need to have them civilly. And then, like for example, I hear people talk about crime in this country, black on black crime. Why are black people so violent? Black people have killed more black people than the Ku Klux Klan has. And statements like this: yes, there is a lot of black crime in this country, but we never hear the term white on white crime. We always hear black on black crime. Well, every time I turn on CNN or MSNBC or Fox News, what do I see? I see what I would call white on white crime, when Russian soldiers who look just like those Ukrainian civilians are killing people who look just like them. Is that not white on white crime? Is that not white people killing white people for no other reason? So how do we explain that? Come on, minds, let's talk about it. Let's
Mhm.
talk about it. That's the kind of platform that we have.
Mhm. Well, I really appreciate what Minds is doing. I sort of, I have to use Facebook and Instagram for work. I can't use Twitter for work because I was banned from Twitter for life.
What did you? Oh, for life? You say for life?
Yep, I was permanently banned for referring to a male predator who did not identify as a man as he. Um,
Now you
so
see. Now, what good does that do? It takes you to another platform where people all gang together. So essentially, they are defeating their own purpose. We should find out why.
yeah.
Why would they ban you for that? That's just absolutely ridiculous.
I
You
mean,
know,
it's an ideology that they've adopted, I suppose, or I really don't totally know. I don't know if it was like internal employee pressure or mass reporting,
or an
or they
algorithm or
were
something.
after me, or yeah, exactly. I mean, people are banned for all sorts of reasons. I will say that I definitely was not saying anything hateful. It was literally, it's this pronoun issue, which we don't need to get into at all. But so, I mean, needless to say, I can't use Twitter, and I do use Minds, and I've tried out some of the other alternate platforms. So yeah, so I appreciate what you and Bill Ottman and others at Minds are trying to do there, because I'm not sure if these big tech platforms are redeemable. I'll let you know. I go soon. I know you're pressed for time and you have to leave.
Okay.
But my final question is, do you think that big tech platforms like Twitter and Facebook are redeemable in that sense, in terms of having, authentic, purposeful, real, respectful conversations, in terms of not, censoring people simply because they aren't going along with a particular ideology or policy or, government practice or whatever? Or do you think that the solution really does lie in alternate platforms like Minds?
There are certainly people who work for Twitter, for Facebook, for whoever, who are decent, hardworking, equitable people who believe in equality for all people. Everybody has a right to their opinion, etc. But ultimately, when it comes down to making money, there was a fellow named Upton Sinclair, and perhaps he put it best. He said, "It is difficult for a man to understand something when his salary depends upon him not understanding it." So a lot of these people who are decent, hardworking people, they got a good job, they're making good money, and they're going along with the program, even though they may not believe in it. So we have that kind of thing going on. But at Minds, we're not like that. We are totally transparent. You can see our algorithms. You're even welcome to take them and apply and build your own website and use our format. Okay, that's how transparent we are. We'll give them to you for free, no charge. But with a lot, understand with a lot of these other platforms, it's all about making money. All right. And are we going to lose sponsors because, somebody, allowed some Klan leader or neo-Nazi to speak on there? We're going to lose advertising dollars. Like back in the 1960s, Nat King Cole, you know who he is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Nat King Cole was the first Black person to have his own TV show, entertainment TV show. And he was a great singer, a great piano player. But a lot of the sponsors, they lost their they would not advertise on that network because they were promoting this Black man. Not because they thought Nat King Cole was a bad person or that he was untalented, but because people refused to buy their product because they were supporting a Black man. So I'm not going to, buy XYZ product anymore because I'm a racist and I don't want support of that. So what do? You're losing money. So then you tell the channel or the network station, hey, unless you take him off the air, we're not going to give you money to advertise anymore of our product. And so when the station begins losing money, they pulled Nat King Cole off. He got banned, not banned, but taken off, the TV. And he lost his show. And then the sponsors came back. So, these platforms also work like that, even in the 21st century. Nat King Cole thing was in the 20th century, back in the 1950s and 60s. So money is the catch-all. And unfortunately, a lot of these companies put money above morality, where it should be flipped.
Right. Well, thank you so much. It was really, really great talking to you. I really appreciate all of your work.
My pleasure, Megan. And let's consider this part 1. We'll do a part 2 sometime.
I would love to. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
You too, my friend. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.